Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Second Aid Show, and probably the biggest video on this channel so far, where, as you can tell from the title, we have the biggest leak we've probably had so far, if true, around the upcoming Amazon Lord of the Rings TV series. And of course, I haven't said what the leak is for, unless we want another deadline thing happening again. So, but anyways, I think we have, as you can see on the bottom left of your screen, we've got a really admirable host of people who will be joining the panel today. But firstly, just starting off, we have the two co-hosts. Firstly, Kyle. Hello, my friend.
Great to be here with everyone.
Indeed, great to have you on as usual. Also, Lakitia.
Day to you, good sir.
Good. I'm doing well, thank you. Hope you are doing well. Also, we have Hen.
Hi.
Hello, and we also have Nikki, who's coming on. I think it's her first time on the Second Aid Show. Hello.
Hello, how's it going?
Going great, thank you. And finally, as our special guest for this episode, I think his first time on the Second Aid Show, we have Matt from Lord of the Rings. Hello, my friend.
Hello, thanks for having me on.
Indeed, and the funny thing is that we had the episode of the Council of the Fans podcast review was actually uploaded last week, but we recorded that in May, and then now
Oh, wow.
coincidentally a week later you're on the Second Aid Show, so maybe
Back to back.
yeah, maybe it was bound to be, even though it's nearly 4 months apart in recording. So
I'll have to watch it because I
Yeah.
can't remember what we talked about, honestly.
I remember a lot of it was a lot of Russell Crowe Salander. That's all I remember.
Ah.
So yeah, but we did touch upon some of the questions and queries we had at the time around the Amazon show and where the Second Aid Show will be. Second Aid Show, precisely as today. What we are going to be able to do after 3 years since 2017 of when the show was first announced, to finally be able to pinpoint down a time frame and exact time spot from when what events we'll see in the show, when potentially the show will start, and we'll be doing this through a character confirmation, which I would say beforehand, and I'll say this in the review as well, this is probably about 5 to 6 months of investigation that we've done here at Fellowship of Fans to try and prove this, because this potentially either this news changes everything. It won't change anything, but change a lot of things and lots of the predisposition beliefs about the show and what Amazon will tell. Of course, nothing is confirmed until Amazon confirms it themselves. Same thing, we've said that from episode 1. And all the leaks from episode 1 to episode 14, I think this is all leading up to this leak. So all these other previous leaks is all intertwined with what this is. So it's all in the same timeline. And I'm talking about timeline, stuff like that a lot, because that is what this reveal indicates. So I just think, without further ado, and also an interesting thing also, Nikki, out of all of us here, does not know the news, so this will be music will be first time she's hearing it as well. So, exclusive, Isildur will be one of the main characters from around episode 3 onwards in the upcoming Amazon The Lord of the Rings TV series. At last, welcome partly to the late Second Age. So, this Amazon show in season 1 will have Isildur as one of the main characters, and that is after 6 months of investigation, double checking, triple checking, cross referencing with sources, trying to get stuff approved, trying to see if this is correct. Because that, for example, if that's wrong and we've gone this wrong, that's like a whole year's of work just washed away if Isildur in the show is not true. So, of course, this is a really big thing and drastically changes and raise a lot of question about this Second Age show, because this is probably the biggest reveal we've had so far since 2017. Of course, we had the synopsis, but that, of course, didn't place the show anywhere. Of course, you got Lenny Henry as Hobbits, that doesn't place the show anywhere. But now we had those code names come out, but that does not place the show anywhere. But now we have heard, and we at Fellowship of Fans can confirm, Isildur will be one of the main characters from episode 3 onwards in the upcoming Amazon show in season 1. So, firstly, this is just something completely this changes a lot of things, doesn't it, Matt? What are your first initial reactions to this?
Honestly, my first reaction was excitement, partially because it gives us a big clue as to when this takes place and the potential storylines. On a personal note, so my third video ever on my YouTube channel was me presenting the theory that Isildur would be the main character of the show. So I'm really pumped about that. I had convinced myself over the past, gosh, more than a year and a half since then, I had convinced myself that it would probably start earlier. So I was smarter then than I am now, apparently. But yeah, just thinking ahead to like potential plot lines, like the fall of Numenor, we knew would be there somewhere, but it sounds like that could come sooner than we might have expected otherwise. And you know, that gives us clues as to other characters like Ar-Pharazôn and Elendil, and yeah, it definitely gives us a lot more to go off of.
Indeed, and I just think a thing I forgot to mention in my initial thing is that, of course, if Isildur is in the show, there will be an Elendil in the show. If there's an Elendil in the show, there will of course be a Miriel, Queen Miriel in the show. There'll of course be Pharazôn, maybe not our Pharazôn yet. There'll be a Pharazôn in the show. There could potentially be also another thing that we can say is that Isildur will be quite young, and that's be from another revelation or reveal later on. That could potentially mean Tar Palantir's rules is where the show might start. But the next person I want to go to is Nikki, because she did not know any of this. So what are your initial reactions to this?
Well, I can safely say I did not expect that. I mean, we have heard a lot of leaks and we have been talking a lot about all of our theories before. So if people who listen to this podcast also listen to the Council of Fans, they already know where I stand and what I was thinking about the show. So it's interesting that well, we don't know, but if they stay canon, they're going to be starting a whole lot later than what I was hoping for. Which is kind of sad because there's a lot of storylines there that I was really looking forward to, but we don't know if they're going to be skipping backwards and forwards, if they're going to be warping the timeline so that more things sort of go in with each other, or maybe they will have flashbacks. Or maybe season 1 will be starting towards the end and then they'll be jumping backwards in time and then forwards. I mean, who knows? But I am I'm excited to see Isildur's storyline, and there's a lot of good stuff that's happening in his time of the Second Age as well. I can sort of see why they would start with that. But at the same time, I think they're missing out of a lot of opportunities if they don't use the rest of the Second Age, everything that happened beforehand.
Indeed, I think.
So
Yeah.
I'm still excited, but that was surprising. It was.
Yeah. And I think the thing that you have compared to all of us is that we've had time to digest this, because I think collaboratively we could all probably agree that we probably would have preferred to see it in the earlier periods of the Second Age, and we'll get into all those time compression stuff in discussions later on in the video as well. But the next person I want to move on to is Chen, and I don't want to take this in a way, I don't want to see him like, oh, I'm just going at Chen or something like this. This is not the purpose of this, but I know, for example, when people first hear this, they're going to be saying, oh, it's not true, how can it be Isildur, we're in season 1, but we have Chen, who is fair enough to think that he thought that this show was not even going to have Isildur in it at all, and then now, of course, he's part of the Source team, so he's part of the thing, and when we've been working on this, actually, I could say, working on this reveal for a few months now, want to give a few, so, I think, from someone even on Reddit, from people saying, oh, they've been seeing for months and months, Ken saying it's the mid-Second Age 100%, and now we're talking about Isildur, so just maybe for the people who don't, for the people who might not believe this, what do you think about that? What do you have to say?
You know, my own position has always been that it doesn't cost me anything to be proven wrong. Oh, I've been proven wrong, and you know, the material that we have is interesting in its own right, so that's interesting. And I very much agree with what Nikki said, that I think they'll find ways that we at the moment can't necessarily explain, to do some of the earlier stuff as well. I don't know how, but they probably will. So yeah.
And also locating Carl, who's I think his best to move these questions on to you, because you have both been co-hosts since episode 1. I've joined this journey from episode 1 to episode 13. But every single Numenor leak we have revealed so far has been from late Numenor, hasn't it? I think we can agree on that. That everything's around the Queen's throne room. We've got also people joining the army, the Numenorians now Middle-earth, all fighting the Orcs. We have got all the guilds, all the seals. You've got Loda. Who's Loda? I wonder who Loda is. That'd be an interesting thing to talk about. We've got their ship. We've got Numenorian ships. All that is all. And we think. Funny thing is, we knew this all the way back when we did the first episode. We did know it was confirmed, but we thought it's coming from the same thing. So, Nikita, do you think now we can start to piece together what all the other leaks you've been hearing since the start?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I think we can safely say is that we've all heard mention of a queen in Numenor. So I think we can safely assume that this is Miriel in this case.
Yeah.
And this presents a whole new, plethora of options. But as for me, I really wanted Celebrimbor involved in any sort of capacity. So, so back when I thought that, at least the first 2 or 3 seasons would be forging centered, his arc was the one that most excited me. So I really hope, like my predecessor said, we get a way to squeeze him in.
I think I'm not sure if I'm pushing too many things, but I think at the same time not to give too much away from how much we're allowed to say, but I think we can safely say that there is at the same time a Celebrimbor in this show. But what I'll go into my theory later on is that it might be maybe different to how people think he's going to be in the entire season, but we can still say that is potentially there is a Celebrimbor. So yeah, there's a Celebrimbor and an Isildur in the show, but maybe that will lead us onto our time jump sections in a bit as well. But Kyle, I think I have to give off to you finally. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, and like everyone said so far, there have been, from the beginning, there were a lot of leaks surrounding Numenor, and it almost seemed at one point that we were going to have a Numenor show, and I think this gives some credence to, where we're heading with it, and like Nikki had said and touched upon, we don't know how the creative team are dealing with it, right? We don't know if it's if we're seeing multiple timelines, or if we're seeing timeline compression, or if we're even seeing maybe a reverse chronology of some sort. We don't know yet.
No, we don't, and we can't confirm that. But going back to you, Matt, again, what are the benefits of Amazon starting so late in the second age with the Isildur? Why do you think Amazon have gone for this?
I honestly, I think a big part of it is how compelling that time period is. If they were to start with the creation of the rings, Numenor's not up to a whole lot during that period. And I think you also get a benefit of, making your main character a human instead of an elf probably makes him a little bit more relatable to the audience. And it's really interesting to me, Isildur being the main character. We know how his story ends from, even people who haven't read the books. They know from the films that it doesn't end particularly well for Isildur. So it's an interesting challenge, and it's an interesting approach, because they're gonna try to make you fall in love with this character and really want to root for him. So it's gonna make it all the more tragic when he inevitably fails. I like the choice. I also would echo the thoughts of others who have said I'm a little bummed if we don't end up getting the Celebrimbor stuff and the Rings of Power and the War of Sauron and the elves, I will definitely be bummed. I'm holding out hope that we'll get flashbacks of stuff like that at the very least. I mean, the nice thing about a series, you can do entire episodes or entire, you know, 2 or 3 episodes at a time that are flashbacks. So, you know, they've got some flexibility to play with here. So the nice thing about kind of starting in the middle of the second age is you can go forward and backward. Whereas if you start at the beginning, you kind of lock yourself into, okay, we've got to start here and we've got to go straight forward. Whereas starting in the middle, you have the flexibility to go backwards as well.
Indeed,
Point.
but and I think I think I agree with a lot of what you said. I think we get into the discussion later about have Amazon maybe gone for the late second age. Maybe they're missing out on a lot of stuff in the mid second age. But I think at the same time, to get this onto a more positive light, Kyle, that means in season 1 we're going to be seeing Farazon. In season 1 we're going to be seeing Queen Muriel. In season 1 we're going to be seeing Elendil. We're going to be seeing all these awesome and amazing characters. So what are your thoughts on that? Because now we can discuss that. Who would have thought a few weeks ago we'd be saying, we can publicly say that we will be seeing Farazon. But of course we can't confirm that because it's not the exclusive. The exclusive is Isildur and Isildur only. But you can't have Isildur without Farazon. So yeah, what about that take on it?
Yeah, I think for me, I always was excited about the events that surround Farazon. The uprising of the Kingsmen and versus the faithful, and the capture of Sauron and his rise to power on the island. And I don't think I necessarily thought that was where we were going to kind of jump in, but I'm excited to see it. I think it makes sense to start there. From the perspective of a casual audience, because you've got the politics, you've got the action, you've got the drama. I think it's going to be exciting to see those events on screen for sure.
Indeed, and I think we'll get back to later seeing not only Isildur but Elendil and all these other characters. But Chen, another thing, that could we be seeing a compression of the timeline here?
Could be. I don't know. Could be. Sure. I mean, technically, all the events that happen in Numenor during the mid-second age, you can kind of put them into the late second age. You can kind of make the young Elendil and the Isildur a kind of menastier figure in terms of wanting to intervene in Middle-earth, and you can have Sauron doing his bit in Middle-earth. He does in the Rings storyline. You can have the Rings being made. You could. I don't know what they're doing, but you could certainly. Could be.
And I think further we could go into this. Matt, I think you have an interesting idea you might want to share.
Yeah, I was just thinking with what Ken was saying there, with the potential compression of the timeline. I know, it's kind of a gray area what Amazon is allowed to do, but if they're allowed to play with that timeline in terms of the years, they might compress so that we've got the Rings of Power drama going on in Middle Earth while we've got the political upheaval of Kingsmen and faithful Númenóreans happening on Númenor. So yeah, I could definitely see that having drama on 2 fronts in that manner. Yeah, it's just a question of whether they're able to do that.
Indeed, and I think the specific focus on Isildur here and what this potentially might mean for potentially season 5 of the show, because Nikki, I remember from the Council of Fans ages ago that you want the show to end off with the War of the Last Alliance, and it does seem like, is this the final thing that is going to be leading to now, do you think?
Yes, I think so, yes. I was just looking at the timeline, trying to get a handle on exactly how much they are covering. And yeah, definitely, like, it makes sense that they started where they did, I guess, because there's so much happening in shorter amount of time than like the earlier years. It's sort of a lot of time goes by. And of course, yeah, it does kind of compact everything so it's easier to get to the War of the War of the Alliance faster, I guess. And I guess keep people interested for a longer amount of time. I mean, for me, I'd be happy to see everything played out, the whole Second Age in detail and just as much detail as they can. I wouldn't have minded if it lasted for 20 seasons. Like, I wouldn't care as long as I could get, like, dive into it completely. But, it makes it easier for them to both compact everything without having to worry about, people getting upset about, oh, that person shouldn't be alive now. It doesn't make sense that the humans are alive for as long as the elves, for instance. But I don't know. Yeah, I guess so. I'm sad that well, I'm still hopeful that we get to see everything beforehand as well. If not, then I will be very sad.
Yeah, I think, some form of time compression is practically a given. Like all this stuff happens over centuries at best and millennia, at worst. But, will we see the downfall of Numenor happen directly after the forging and the Quath Low? Honestly, I see that as a possibility. So, you have Miriel or her generals come to the elves' aid instead of Minastir. Have Pharazôn lead the charge against Sauron's forces, much like he does in the late Second Age. I think that could happen. And theoretically, I think, we could, without too many fatal complications to the immediate story they're telling, it could be done. But at the same time, this is a massive, massive change to the legendarium at large. So this is literally skipping millennia. So I don't think the estate would allow it.
That's interesting. I think I already did one earlier. So what do you? I'm just thinking. There's so many interesting things that have. It depends on what way Amazon do want to do this. Another thing, I think, non-linear. Is that possible? Gen?
Sure, that's possible. I didn't see that show, but I understand that The Witcher did it. Didn't it?
Yeah, not very well.
Not very well, but
No.
it's a thing, and certainly like Griffiths and Torrance did it like a century ago. So, so it's possible, sure. I don't know quite how you do that, but you could.
So, who do you think is playing Isildur?
Thank you, random guy who came out of nowhere. I think we'll have to pass that over to Gen.
It didn't really occur to me until just now, and it's kind of funny that it didn't, but he has to be quite young, so that works, but Maxim Baudry kind of looks like, what's his name from the movie, Harry Sinclair. The Isildur guy, much younger obviously, but it kind of looks like him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what's... Oh, yeah, it really does look like Harry Sinclair. So, yeah, Maxime Baudry is a shout for Isildur. But, Lakitia, do you think there's any other actors that might have a shout that could be playing Isildur?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, it must be somebody relatively young. So my first thought was also Maxim Baldry due to the slight resemblance. I could maybe also see Benjamin Walker or potentially Augustus Prue.
Yeah.
I don't know.
My initial thought was Charlie Vickers.
Ooh. Could be.
I think he's
But-
one of the younger ones of the cast, I believe.
So what we have also learnt is that Isildur's role is his codename on set is Cole, and we've got the character description here via Nighthedge Media. Nighthedge Media, it is series regular male, 18 to 22 Caucasian, male, series, okay, I'm saying get up to 6 options, a young athletic male in his very early 20s to play around 18. He has the weight of the world on his shoulders, so much feel so must feel an old soul, troubled but charismatic, a great role, appearance Caucasian, cast. So what do you think we can tell from this leaked character description who we now know that this is for Isildur? What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I think my first thought when I read the character description, I think wisely they're looking at this as kind of a tie to Aragorn that we met in Peter Jackson's trilogy. That whole weight of the world on his shoulders, old soul. So we get that. There was that element to Viggo Mortensen in the trilogy. You get that Numenorian, even though he's only 18 years old. These guys live for a very long time. That was my first thought. Was like, wisely, I think they're gonna make us see him as an Aragorn type figure. I also kind of chuckled that the last sentence says a great role. It made me wonder in these casting things if they're ever like, this is a so-so role. It's not that good.
Yeah.
I think you hit on a really good point there too, because originally there was a lot of talk about this being like a young Aragorn show, right?
Right.
So I think the move from young Aragorn to maybe a show centered more around Isildur is easier than a full on point A to point B second age show.
And I love the idea of that because there's so many parallels between Isildur and Aragorn in the lore. Aragorn is the one who redeems the mistakes of his ancestor. So I think it's kind of could be a really cool thing to see. An Aragorn type figure who ultimately, at the very end, fails.
And do you think maybe
Because
that
he
is
doesn't have a Sam.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
perfect there?
Yes.
But maybe do you think an interesting thing from that character description seems early 20s, so this is a younger Isildur. So logistically, timelines wise, does this mean we have to be starting the show, the full narrative of the show around 3100 of the Second Age, around that time? Because canonically, at that time, we know Sauron gets captured by the Numenorians who come over, but it's still, I think Amazon will have to still just bunch that all together and compress that much amount to have all these things fit at the same time. But Hen, what king or queen do you think we might be seeing at the start of this show then, if we're seeing a younger Isildur maybe?
I think it's almost beyond question that we'll be seeing Tar Palantir for any number of reasons. One, it makes sense chronologically, but even more significantly, if I were writing this, I would start it with the time of Tar Palantir. I mean, who doesn't like a good coup d'etat? It's good material. It's interesting, and it's very Game of Thrones like the whole thing is shaping up to be. More than it would have been if it would have been the Rings storyline. Both kind of Game of Thrones like, but this one is more.
Yeah, and I think another thing I want to get into is what we could actually see in the show now. But another thing I wanted to mention is that a lot of our leak says Queen Throne Room and Numenorian Queen. Maybe Tar Palantir is quite old at this time, or maybe if there is a queen later on in the show and there used to be a king, maybe your own imagination can come to play for that one. But I'm just thinking, now we've gone past the news, that's all involved. We know it is Cole, we've got that character description, we've gone through some of the actors it could be, but what does this mean for the show now? I think the interesting thing takeaway is that the integral Numenorian politics at this time, and I think that's the important thing. And Carl, I'll start off with you. What do you think this suggests now?
Yeah, I think there's, like I said earlier, there's a lot going on politically with the Kingsmen and the faithful at this time, and I think wasn't there some photo of a cast member wearing a hat or a shirt or something that said something about the faithful under the stars in Elvish?
Was
So
there?
maybe
There was.
yeah, I remember something like that.
Nazanin Boniadi, I put that on screen right now, is her leaked story. She actually put it on her story. But yeah, continue.
So I can see the I can see kind of that particular storyline kind of centering around that conflict between the Kingsmen and the Faithful, and I think that'll be really interesting to see play out on screen.
Indeed. And Lakitia, we're seeing this season 1. So do you think we'll be seeing this a more fleshed out by Amazon?
Yeah, I think that's the main advantage of, bringing these characters in already in season 1, that we can really flesh them out by the time we're, up to the last alliance, if that's where we're headed. So that kind of excites me, despite the fact that, some other things may get left out.
And indeed, and I think, and we talk about Machiavellian politics, we could have seen that in the Region, we could have seen that now, but do you think, it can get quite political, but now do you think we're going to, maybe people don't really like to hear, the Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones comparison, but do you think is Amazon are going down that route, aren't they?
I think they are, because the late Numenorian period is not just Machiavellian, it's, incestuous at some point. So,
do you want to explain what happens, actually, for some people who don't know?
Pharazôn performs a coup d'etat on the aged, we suppose, Tar Palantir, and due to political reasons has to forcibly, in most versions, marry his first cousin, Miriel. So it's people who won't know the story will be people who don't know this story wouldn't believe that it came from Tolkien's pen. I don't think,
Yeah.
but it did. But it does.
But
Yeah, and I think if I can jump in. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was saying that's Tolkien, but it's from Tolkien.
Yeah, I think where the Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones comparison does a disservice to this show is when people think of Game of Thrones, they think of everything that goes into Game of Thrones, and that doesn't always match up with the tone of Tolkien. So Tolkien definitely has some horrific things, and some like this instance of forcibly marrying your cousin. The question is how they execute it, and I think that's where a lot of people. So when the Game of Thrones comparison is brought up, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you guys are talking about is like the politics and the struggle for power, stuff like that will be very Game of Thrones-esque. I don't expect, and I hope that I'm right, that they would go the Game of Thrones route in terms of gratuitous, sex or even violence, stuff like that. I think that's where a lot of the, where a lot of fans get turned off by the Game of Thrones comparison.
Yeah, and I think
But in terms of the more meaningful thing, the politics, it's very Game of Thrones.
Yes, yeah.
There's also like the cult of Melkor and stuff like that, which needs to be handled in a way that's not too Game of Thronesy. Like you're saying, Matt, I agree that that should be there, but it needs to be handled correctly.
Yeah. And that's another thing that we'll probably be seeing in this show as well. But Nikki, I think for me, one of my favorite characters. Okay, it might sound weird as one of my favorite characters. I think one of the most compelling characters in the Second Age is that now in season 1 we are going to be probably seeing Pharazôn as well before our Pharazôn. So what do you think? Is that quite exciting? We're going to be seeing Pharazôn and also maybe even Loda. I wonder who Loda is. But Nikki, here, Pharazôn.
Yes. I do recall in, I think, our first ever Council of Fans talking about him and being quite excited about that storyline and the Faithful and the Kingsmen and all of that. And I do believe one of my earlier theories was that they were gonna focus a little bit on that. Probably, as we've said earlier, a lot of it is based on the success of shows like Game of Thrones. I mean, they definitely want to stay. So they want to keep it interesting, and they want to stay like they don't want to go too high fantasy, so it's so extreme that they can't sort of bring in all of the other potential fans that haven't read every single book that Tolkien has ever written. But well, I am excited because I think he's going to be a very interesting character to watch, and all of that stuff that goes on there is it's a very dark time, and I think they have a lot of room to make a lot of interesting storylines that we haven't read about, and maybe like we might follow characters that we haven't read about in Tolkien's books that most definitely probably existed in the same time and experienced this, because you don't see everyone all the time. I think they have a lot of opportunities and potential.
And
Yes.
I think you've talked about potential a lot there. Another
Yes.
character.
Well, there is potential. We don't know anything.
But indeed, I know we just have to wait and see. But another character with Farazan is her cousin. Who wants to tackle this one? That's your cue. Okay then.
Sorry, I was typing. What was the question?
No, that was Lakiti's cue. But
Okay, so yeah, another interesting like late second age character is definitely Tarmiriel, whom we've already mentioned, and hers is a very, very bleak story. Really, really sad. I think it's a very delicate one as well, so I'm really curious how they're gonna tackle that. She was forcibly wed to her cousin, which could be pretty gruesome. I think that was one of the darkest things Tolkien wrote in the late Second Age. So I really hope they, handle this in a very, considerate manner. So that could be interesting.
Indeed.
And I think we also have a character in the, leaked audition tapes whose description could possibly suit the profile of a Númenórean queen quite well. So that was the character of Asta, and she was described as a series regular to be portrayed by a female actress between the ages of 50 and 59. So the role read, it's a major role for a well-established and powerful female actor in her 50s or early 60s. As a high-ranking lady, we are looking for someone with real stature here. She is mighty but reserved, also shows grace and humor. She was to be a series regular, and her appearance was described as the character portrayed is a diverse female. So I think we've all assumed that this could potentially be a Númenórean queen. As far as I'm concerned, the age range does seem a little bit on the older side when it comes to Miriel. I would have imagined her a little bit younger, at least at the beginning of this show. But I think otherwise, mighty but reserved, that, I think that could potentially signify somebody of, royal lineage.
Clearly want us to like her.
Yeah.
Before the unexplainable happens. But I think that's the best way.
Please do.
Yeah, which we are probably now going to see in the show. But the final thing I want to touch upon is this will probably mid-show lead to the downfall, wouldn't it, Matt? Do you think that is where Amazon's probably the first thing they're going to try and hit?
Yeah, I think it's obviously up for debate how soon we'll see that downfall. I tend to think, as I've over the months and years since the show's been announced, I've over and over in my head have tried to map out what I think the seasons will play out and what will be the big finales each year. I kind of lean toward maybe the downfall in Númenor happening at the end of the second season, if I'm just guessing, because I think, with Tar Palantir, if he's the king, as we're assuming, given the age of Isildur, I think, you probably have Farazan as one of your main players in terms of antagonists for at least the first full season. And it would just seem kind of fast to be able to go from being introduced to Numenor to having Numenor destroyed all over the course of, 8 episodes or however many episodes it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I had to guess, I'm going to say, Numenor possibly gets destroyed at the end of season 2.
Ah,
Maybe. Sorry.
No, that's funny.
Um,
Just nothing going.
I think I'd rather see Numenor, being destroyed by the end of season 3 potentially, because I think, the Numenorian stuff is very juicy, and of course there's lots for them to do back in Middle Earth as well, establishing all the new realms and stuff. But I think there's more court drama and just more intrigue in the Numenorian bit. So I would think they would try to prolong that a little bit longer. But yeah.
Yeah, I'd just add that the drowning of Numenor itself is this cataclysmic event, and it's going to be this huge moment in TV history, right? Like that's a big thing. So I think to have that later in the season or in the series might a little later at least might make sense.
That's a really good point. I agree.
I'm thinking like at least season 4, because it's such a big. You don't want to be anticlimactic, and they do. Talking about Numenor, it's easy to forget that we do know that the show is going to concern itself with dwarves as well. It's going to concern itself with elves, certainly. So there's stuff to fill a season with, especially if they are going to include some of the earlier periods somehow. So I think Fall of Numenor is probably very late in the game. Season 4, maybe even somewhere in season 5, and then Last Alliance.
So we are wrapping up now. This has been a lot to take in, and I'm sure this amount of time won't do enough justice for what this Isildur reveal will mean about this show. And I'm sure about 5 years' time we'll look back on this video, 3 years' time when season 2, season 3 is out, when revealing the first time that we finally knew when the show will start. But as we are at the end of this video, might as well talk about the ending of the show and what Isildur being in season 1 means for the end of the show. So, Matt, do you have an interesting theory around that?
Yeah, so back in my original theory video that I mentioned earlier, and I'm going to stand by it because clearly I was smarter back then than I am now. So my idea for the ending, what I think would be amazing, which they'll probably never do, but we end with the War of the Last Alliance. Isildur gets the ring, and we end with Elrond yelling "Isildur" as he's walking away. Boom! Cut to black. The end. Show over.
Love it.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's cool.
Goosebumps.
They'll probably never do it, but I would love it.
I'll have it on screen, that scene. Well, not copyright reasons, but I'll have that still from it there. And I think
Great.
I'll leave that up until the end. So it's been a pleasure having you all on. I'm sure there'll probably be a lot more videos to do around this and what this means. And everything from the leaks, we hear the Numenorian army is first in the orcs, that is in the late Second Age. You heard the leaks around, and I think it's safe to say that it seemed like the entire, even the dwarven stuff, some of that was from the first episodes, but some of that was from the later episodes as well. The orcs attacking those villages, that is probably from the late, it is from the late Second Age. I think one thing we haven't actually talked about is where this puts us in the Second Age. I think 3,100 to 3,300 of the Second Age does make sense. I think after hearing Isildur, do you guys agree? It's most plausible.
This part of it, at least, for sure.
Yeah.
This for this storyline, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and everything that we've heard in all the previous Second Age show has all been within context of us knowing that we know that in the background there is something happening around the late Second Age, which is why probably people ask why we talked about Elendil so much for the Loda one. But hey, we can't say anything more around that. But so in this video we have confirmed that this show will, according to the involvement of Isildur, will probably be happening in the late Second Age, or at least from episode 3 and onwards. And all the thing around the discussion around, will there be a time jump for episode 2? Will it serve as a prologue? What things will we see in this prologue now? How come we are seeing the early Second Age? How come we're seeing Tyrion and 3,300 Numenor in the same show, same season potentially as well. That is another interesting thing, and I'm sure we can't answer these questions all in this time given to us. So that sounds like a Gandalf quote, but we can't in this specific time frame. So we'll have to wait and see what you guys think in the comments below. That'd be really interesting as well. Your initial reactions to this, but I think we're going to have to leave the discussion. I'm sure there's so much more we can talk about, but I think we'll be doing a follow-up video later on next week as well. But as always, firstly, thank you, Matt, for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun, and I'm excited that we have a little bit more information on the show, and it's great talking to you guys about it.
Indeed, I think it is really good, even if it might not be what some fans want to hear, that we do have some clarity on when this show will start, because 2017, before this video, what did we know? Not much about where the show would start. But Nikki, the surprised one, who's meant to be the surprise one of this video, thank you for coming on.
Meant to be? Are you complaining about my lack of surprisement?
No, I'm saying that you're meant to be the one who's surprised. That
I'm very surprised. I'm very surprised. It's been fun talking to you guys, and I'm surprised. I'm surprised on the inside. I promise.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for having me. Thank you. Namarie.
Perfect. Also, Lakitia, always been on since episode 1, is episode 40 now. Has been amazing having you on as well. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And it's really so good to finally, have a clearer idea of where this show is headed. So, yeah.
Indeed. And I think getting it off our chest, Kyle, as well, having known this, I think I told you this actually episode 4 or 5 actually, but I knew since episode 1, but I told you guys episode 4 or 5. You were like, how is that possible? But yeah, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks. It's really great to have some clarification around that, because I know we've been talking about it for quite a while, and it's always lovely to chat with all of you. This has been no exception. I really appreciate this. It's great.
Indeed. And last but not least, Ken. Thank you, my friend. I'm sure we've been doing this for quite a while now. I think it's over a year since we first talked around this at all, and now a year later we are revealing stuff like this. So thank you, my friend.
Oh yeah, it's always a pleasure. This especially.
And from the Mist Penguin, do you wanna say thank you? Thank you for being here as well.
No, it's just fine. I'm Amazon's double agent, just checking in on you.
Okay, fair enough. I think that is just about it. And I'll say one last thing. It's really nice that a year is literally 22nd today. The 20th was the first ever set picture we released from the Icy Mountainside set, and then a year later revealing Isildur's involvement in the show and him being one of the main characters. So yeah, it is nice sentiment in that way as well, seeing how far everything has gone with this channel as well. But thank you guys for watching. Please let me know in the comments below what you guys think of this. This is probably it won't take a day or two. It'll probably take quite a while to digest, because this is 3-4 years of us waiting for this type of news. But until the next video, my friends, goodbye.